Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we're all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Emily Schneider, visual storyteller specializing in PowerPoint design. Please enjoy Emily Schneider. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Emily Schneider, visual storyteller specializing in PowerPoint design. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Mari. I'm excited to talk to you today.
I am excited to chat with you about creativity and how it shows up in your life. But before we get there, why don't you take a couple of minutes and let our listeners know a little bit more about who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, so I'm Emily. I am a visual storyteller. Like you said, I specialize in PowerPoint design. My magical knack is really taking complex information and turning it into impactful, empowering, and easy to understand presentations. I love helping leaders, executives, just anybody with a business story to tell, elevate that experience so that they can better connect, create trust, authenticity, and really move their business and the conversations forward, unlocking really cool opportunities. What the secret sauce is that I help people have more confidence when they show up. And when you have more confidence and you can tell your story with more poise or with more, right, just having that, really the confidence. I mean, there's other words, but the magic is always in the confidence. It shows up and you're able to do your job so much better. And so it's so much fun that I get to help people shine a little brighter with such a simple tool.
I love that. And I love the confidence piece. It ties right into creativity. How did you find yourself into this world of visual storytelling?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, it started way back. I've always been creatively curious, I could say.
Mhm.
And I always had to digest information or break things down into simple form. So, creativity, art has always been something I addressed. I think I'm also an empathetic person. And so, art is a form of expression without using words, right? And it's
Mhm.
allowed me through dance, through art, through any medium. Um, Creativity brings out energy and feelings and all that
Mhm.
stuff. So it's innate in my nature. I got really into it. My first thing I ever made that made people do something that I got the most excited about was my Sweet 16 invitation.
Oh.
Super ugly, questionable fonts, quirky colors. Like it was bad to the bone. But what did it do? I shared it with my parents, and the way that they responded, the way their faces light up. And then I ended up having a luncheon, and there were like 30 of my closest family and friends there. So I did something that moved people to come
Mhm.
together. And that really meant something to me. And I saw that there was a little spark inside of me, kept that curiosity going, and got introduced to great creative graphic arts. Studied visual communication with graphic design as my major in college, did about 10 years in the marketing advertising world. And what happened is that when you're selling campaigns, you have to create a story for your buy-in for your clients, right? When you're
Mhm.
working with an agency. And so I used to raise my hand because I loved being a little fly on the wall in those meetings, and being part of the senior leadership talking about how they would present it. And I said, I'll design the presentation. Like, I like grids, I can do this. And I just always loved learning. But what it turned into and what I discovered was there was so much power in learning, but then what that meant when you had a strong story and you saw, I got to see and be part of the clients experiencing this and how they responded. And with the traditional marketing campaign, you don't see what the end user, how they feel and how they interact, or if they actually make that purchase. Data
Mhm.
will tell you, but you don't know what they're really feeling. And so I saw this difference of like designing
Mhm.
campaigns versus designing stories. And
Mhm.
stories, just again, go back to this creative, empathetic heart of mine. They connect and they bring me together. There's this ability to be a clean designer and to help also bring and shine my expertise with somebody else's work and let them, share their confidence or shine a little brighter. And or borrow my confidence in them until theirs is there. And so that's how I landed here. A lot of questions, a lot of curiosity, and a lot of saying like, what makes me happy and where do I
Mm.
thrive and how can I share that with the world?
Oh my gosh, like amazing to be able to have taken yourself on that journey and honed in on what you are really passionate about and what brings you joy and how that shows up and what that looks like. When you think about creativity, what does it mean to you to be creative?
Being creative is about expressing something in a way and bringing it to life that's more that can tell that story that connects with
Mm.
somebody, and whether they understand it or interpret it in the same way. Again, that's like I think the difference of fine art versus like a business side of art, right? My art has to be interpreted in a certain way, but what I help people do is articulate and tell their story in a way so people understand it. And I like to use the term, they can become conversation conductors. And music and sound is a form of art, but as just like when you go to an orchestra and the conductor stands on stage and he tells the different sections how loud,
Mhm.
how soft, when to play, and he creates this harmonious experience. As a presenter in a room, you are that conductor and you are creating
Mm.
this harmonious, beautiful experience for your audience. And when you have the slides behind you or next to you or on screen that connect the dots, um, you become that leader, you become that voice, and you again you set this stage, you create this space. And we live in this world, right, where it's an attention seeking economy. We're used to seeing, hearing, thinking, smelling, tasting, right? All these visual or visceral inputs to create and to feel. And so, and we also know that we all learn different or we digest information. So when you can connect telling your story, having a confident leader or presenter in a room, and then you have slides that can back that up, that support that,
Mm.
it's magic.
Absolutely. I was literally thinking that word as you were talking. I was like, it sounds magical.
Yay!
Like once everything
Yeah.
aligns and comes together and but I imagine getting to that kind of magic moment takes time and effort and there's challenges along the way. I'm curious
All
for you, what are some of those challenges and how do you navigate them?
Yes, always. I was going to say, even when I told my story, right, it seems like the sweet spot, but there was a lot of failure along the way. And some of my fears, or some of the things that I always like throw out there with some of my coaches, is like the fear of staying still. It's not about failure; it's about staying stuck and still. The
Mm.
fear of being basic, and then
Hmm.
one of my challenges that I just was journaling about this weekend is putting myself in uncomfortable situations so that I can fail, so that I can figure it out. And that's what I think is about being creatively curious, is the openness to say there's always a solution and there's always actually a million ways we can do something as a
Hmm.
creative. How I choose to solve it based on what those inputs are and how my clients need it, right, is the beauty. And then if that aligns to what they need. So yes, there's always something. There's understanding the topic. There's getting an understanding of how this person presents.
Hmm.
Even just the way I run my business is I don't accept projects or take on any work until I meet with somebody. Usually it's virtually, but I want to make sure our chemistry is good, our karma
Yeah.
is good, that they're going to get me. I don't want written feedback because that can be interpreted and be misdirected. I want to get on a Zoom call. I'm super transparent. I'm going to show you my screen. I'm going to edit it in real time so you can see, oh, you don't like the way I initially did it. Let's try a couple versions. Does this feel better? Because when
Hmm.
we can hear and we can connect with people, we can move things along faster. So I've learned this sort of the hard way and the good way. And it's a lot. Again, and I'm reading a book that's all about, it's actually called What Would You Do If You Were Not Afraid by Michaela.
Oh,
It starts with an O. And I Ostrand, really should know what her name is. I apologize, but I'm listening to it. So I don't see
okay.
the words and I'm a
Yeah.
visual learner. So anyway, I apologize. Um, but she talks a lot about like the idea of failure, of trying something,
Mm-hmm.
of doing something, of being curious is the word
Mm-hmm.
she's always throwing out there. So clients will give me something and I need to help them digest a process or give them a scope or understand where a product is in its launch
Mm-hmm.
journey and how investors should and where they should come in and why it's going to be beneficial for them, right? Those are some great use cases.
Yeah.
And so I might get something that's data driven. Cool. I've solved a lot of data driven problems, but sometimes it's like creating a whole new process to understand how this implements or how this disrupts change. And that takes being curious. It takes research. It takes, diving into other under or other designs, but also there's neuroscience and there's understanding how people digest information. And I just enjoy learning and
Yeah.
growing. And so I love taking on these creative challenges and figuring out. And I always say I learn something new. I'm not the expert at all these different industries I work in, but I'm an expert at telling the story and really being a creative
Mm.
problem solver.
That's amazing. And as you were talking about reworking something so that a client understands the feeling behind it, I'm curious how you navigate that with people who are maybe a little more cerebral and less emotion driven or less feeling based because
Yes.
it's language that not everyone uses.
Yeah. But so it comes, so yes, but I think it's like there are some cases where it's very, like there's different degrees, right? So at the
Hmm.
beginning, at the baseline, let's say, like when I work with financial people, yes, they're very like black and white. Like they don't see that, right? It's so data driven. But when their data comes to life, when you add color, when you start to
Mm.
say, we're talking about quarters, and every time we talk about quarter one, we're going to use this color. And every time we talk about quarter two, we're going to use this color, and three and four. And you create these consistencies, simple,
Mm.
consistent, and intentional with design choices, you automatically unlock this kind of emotional connection and make it easier for them to tell the story. You get rid of all the unneeded information. And that's part of my strategy is simplifying, being
Mhm.
consistent, being intentional, keeping things, one to two key things per slide and having more slides so that it's easy for people to hear you, see the supporting data, and then follow along. And our brains do this beautiful job of putting the puzzle pieces together if we lay them out properly. And that's
Mm.
where color and intentional design really come into play.
That's amazing I mean, you have to know so much about the neuroscience of
Yeah.
attention. And I'm curious if you've seen a shift in like audience attention span over the course of the time you've been doing this, because yeah, I just understand my own attention span
Yeah,
and
sure.
how that has changed in the past decade. And I'm curious how that shows up in the work that you do.
Yes, for sure. It looks different, right? And again, it's just because I think we're more aware that people are different. We're more aware of situations. And part of the work is understanding who we're presenting to,
Mm.
where this presentation is, how it's being delivered in a big
Hmm.
boardroom via Zoom, right? Those all are important to
Hmm.
understand before we even start talking about design,
Hmm.
having that groundwork. But I think it comes, yes, there's been a change. But the other good thing is that we know we're 65% more likely to retain information when it's visually designed. And I
Oh.
think that when I started, 20 years ago, it wasn't as much about that. It was about the
Hmm.
wow factor, it was about the bigness, it was about the boldness, and
Hmm.
people had more time to digest. And now we know we only have a few seconds. And
Hmm.
so, what can we do in that quick moment, in those first few moments, to capture their attention? And that's where simple slide designs, being intentional with font choices, your brand coming through, making sure you're talking with your slides, not from your slides,
Hmm.
allow your audience and those people to stay connected. And then it's giving some subtle cues. Again, we talked about color. Think about, you could have signposts, which are kind of like, think about like on a website where you have like your tabs, or what
Hmm.
page you're on. Having information like that so your audience knows where you are in your story. So if they do get sidetracked, because again, we can hear something and we're gonna start going down our own rabbit hole. So if you can bring them back in,
Mm.
that's where it's important to have one to two things per slide. So you're not constantly, but you're consistently swapping your slides out and giving them something interesting. Oh, there's a change there. I should pay attention.
Mm.
Are some of the tricks or things that I've noticed. But yes, there's always a change. But when you over design, when you do it, you create more confusion. And so
Hmm.
it's finding that really nice balance of simplicity with intentionality.
Yeah. So who are the people who are reaching out for your services? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I actually do a lot of my own outreach, and that's how I'm getting a lot of interest. Is It's been part of my habit. I spend every day on or every business day on LinkedIn reaching out to 20 new contacts, sharing
Mhm.
what I do, and see if they would be interested in the conversation. I target and work a lot with finance, tech, information technology, sales
Mm-hmm.
leaders, and some CMOs within these and education is another sector I work with. But I work with like the CMOs, the COOs, the founders. So some of the more senior leadership,
Mm-hmm.
investors, startups who are articulate and know how to tell their story, but they're really good at saying, this is not my expertise in designing the presentation. I know what it needs to say because I
Mm-hmm.
don't create content, I just refine it. So they come to
Got
me
it.
with their story or their mosh pit of old slides.
Mm-hmm.
They'll walk me through what that presentation is based on where it is, who they're talking to, and then together we'll start to fine tune it.
Mm.
And so I work with leaders who are more confident in already being there, but I help elevate that, right? They're just like, I got this big meeting, or it's worth, a $5,000 investment to get a $300,000, you know, like, or five, sorry, I should say it like this, for them to spend $5,000 to get a $300,000 investment from one investor is
Y-
worth it.
Yeah.
And then because it's in PowerPoint, it's turnkey. You can reuse it. You can update your data.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes this evergreen piece. But I will say a
Mm.
lot of my clients come back. They don't always, they're like, we don't need to mess with updating the data. We'll let you do it. But
Yeah.
it's lovely.
I mean, it sounds like these individuals really know their strengths and want
Yes.
someone who excels in an area where they don't feel they have a lot of
Yeah.
strength,
It,
and that's where you come in.
That's exactly right. And what I love about that is, and why I target these kind of leaders or this position is they're kind of out of the weeds. I don't know, as a
Hmm.
creative person, and when I was in marketing, like when you get the people who aren't as confident, they get really into the weeds and they don't get it, and they create more confusion in these cycles. And I
Yeah.
don't know, I just remember like always like wanting to hit my head against the wall, like, are you serious? Like this is the feedback? Like, can we talk about it? And again, it's always done for email, be an account director. So like
Hmm.
now I get to own that, which makes such a difference. It's very transparent. It's very, we're very connected, right? I
Yeah.
hear it firsthand. But yeah, they trust you, and I trust them too. Like, give me the information. I'm not going to mess it up, but I'm going to take it and I'm going to be able to elevate it. And when they come back and they're like, you don't have it, it's like I can sit there and I can ask the right questions, or I can say, okay, then let's
Hmm.
let's go back. So it just, that process being really open really helps, with people who get it and who know that like they don't want to be involved. But it's the same way where I'm like, I don't write content because that's not my strength. So
Yeah.
I have clients come to me and they're like, we don't have copy, or we know we need this thing. I'm like, great. I have a great network of writers I would love to
Hmm.
introduce you to.
Oh, that's so helpful. It sounds like not only do you do the visual storytelling, but you also have so many resources and you're a little connector
Yeah, I
to
try to be
people.
right.
I love it.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think it goes back to like knowing your boundaries, right? And I think
Hmm.
that's where like, that's why I love what I do, and where my zone of genius can really thrive is because I can say no to the things that cause noise, that
Yeah.
don't let me focus. And even my evolution as a freelancer, I started as a general designer. I was
Hmm.
doing logos, I was doing branding, I was doing marketing materials. I was like getting caught in all these little things, and my brain was like all over the place. And I
Hmm.
realized once I niched myself, I actually opened the door to so many different and
Mm.
more aligned opportunities because I was clearer on who I was looking to work with. So that was a really big shift for me too.
That what a great reminder that when you are getting really bogged down with the things that you don't like to do or struggle to do or isn't your, forte, that you can make an adjustment to
Yeah.
build a network of people who that is their forte, and then you can
Yeah.
collaborate and work together. I'm curious for, when a client comes back and says like, no, you haven't nailed it yet. What is that process for you after you ask them questions? Do you like marinate on it while you do other things, or are you like, I get right back into it?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think it really depends on what that is and actually what the industry is. And
Okay.
to be honest, where I am in life. So sometimes it's about, okay, I got it, let's jump right in. Or let me start researching. Or I always find there's like some serendipitous connection. So,
Hmm.
like, oh my God, I'm reading this book that's about, the data storytelling. So let me like go to the chapter that talks about kind of information architecture a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or I last week it was a lot of walking, and it was
Mm.
thinking about projects. And I actually had a moment or a walk last week where I was talking to myself out loud about something, and I was
Hmm.
like, okay, I do this, and then I try this. I've definitely solved things in my sleep weirdly, and that started in college. I just think again, as a creative, when you're sitting in your spot and you're forced to do creative work, it never comes out alive or it never
Hmm.
comes out right. And one of the things, one of my clients who I look up to now as a mentor, she made a comment once that was something about the lines of like, you can time block all you want, but as a creative, it's also like, like I could set 2 hours to work on a project, but if I'm not creatively inspired in that moment, it's a
Hmm.
waste of time. And so there is that balance as a creative to
Mm.
find, I think, and something I'm working on as the seasons change and my life is changing again. I did this in the fall, is that productivity optimization and
Mm.
how and when you're the most creative and the output or the focus needs to happen, and how you can utilize that. Because for me, the summer looks different than the winter because I'm yearning to get outside, and so I do a lot more brainstorming and thinking on my bike and riding
Mm.
around or at the park while my kids are playing, and I'll be walking or listening to more things. And in the
Hmm.
winter, it's right. I'm a little bit more of a homebody, so it's a lot more reading and it's a lot more kind of quieter inspiration. So I find a lot of my inspiration from just getting offline, but also then going into some of the best websites or just searching like what's a 4-part flow concepts look like. And that can come
Hmm.
from other slide designers or just also just like stock image sites have really good starting points to make
Yeah.
me think like how things work, um,
Mm.
and stuff like that. So I hope that
Yeah.
answers that question.
Absolutely. No, I love because sometimes I think, like you were saying, when, or, if we hear, oh, at 9 a.m. every day I have to sit down and do XYZ, but I'm not feeling it on Wednesday, but this is the time I have, so I'm going to sit here and be miserable. So really finding what is your most creative time during the day? What is the time you are most tired? What is the time? And so scheduling things when you're most tired or most stressed so that you have
Yeah, and
that
forcing it. Yeah.
flexibility. Yeah.
Totally. It's so weird and it looks so different. I actually got introduced to an app that I was like trying to see if that could help recently. The app told me my optimal wake up time was at 4 a.m. and my optimal work time in the morning was like 4 to 7. I was like, well, this isn't going to work for me. Or, they're like, go to bed, like whatever it was. I was like, this doesn't work for my life. But it did reinforce that for me, it's morning. Morning
Yeah.
is my most productive time. So what do? I kind of block my schedule and I don't
Hmm.
allow clients to put meetings on my calendar until the afternoon.
Oh,
If that makes
yeah.
sense. Or I will set timers because
Hmm.
sometimes if I'm like, and I did this today before our meeting, I was like, I could go and lollygag or I could go do something that's very action, not high brain power. And I was like, but I got 45 minutes. What can I get done in 45 minutes? And I kind of put that
Hmm.
challenge on myself. And I got a couple slides done, or I got thinking about something differently
Hmm.
than just not then kind of pushing it off. So it's finding a balance. There's not always going to be a perfect solution.
Yeah.
Maybe there will be when I don't have kids and I'm on my own schedule, but until
Sure.
then it's working with, not against, what I've
Yeah.
got.
But it sounds like you actually took the time to figure out what is going to work for you. And so there is that invitation I hear of get to know yourself a little bit deeper
Yes.
to create what is actually going to fit your life with kids, without kids, the season you're in and all of that. So,
Yeah, for
congratulations
sure.
on finding
Yeah,
that
I
for
just think like if
yourself.
you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you want, if you don't know what's best for you, how do you show up for other people? How do you show up for your work?
It's a
How do you
great
produce
question.
things? And so sometimes it's hard, right? They say like it's like selfish. It's not, you're not selfish.
Yeah.
It's like it's self-love. Like, and it's
Mm,
figuring that out in the best way. And it doesn't always look the right same and every day looks
yeah.
different, but showing up and being curious about it helps keep it open,
Mm,
right? And when you're curious, you're open to that. You're not, there's no like fine line. You can adapt to what you need.
yeah. Have you always been a curious person, or is this something that you picked up later in your
I
life?
think I have always been curious. I think my ability to really own it and not be afraid of it, right? I think
Mm,
before when I was younger, I don't think I was as vocal about it. I didn't know it was such a safe word. And
hmm
now I will say that my friends, that's like one of the first words that they describe me of. And I get this a lot is like, I love your curiosity. And it comes in every form.
hmm
When I'm talking to my kids, when I'm talking to my friends, when I'm talking about work, when I'm talking about my own health, it's
Yeah.
about being curious. I just think like once you know, how do you go back? And so when you can
Mm,
stay curious and open, you can start to build something. You can start to accept things. And the book I'm reading actually talks about a time in history when and so I think it all roots back to like these are just cycles of who we are and how we've evolved. But when you can be curious and open, I mean, going back to Adam and Eve, right? Like
mm.
Adam was curious and he did something and it changed everything, but he didn't let it change him. He was open to what was next and he dealt
Mm.
with what that meant. Was it failure? I don't know, but at that moment maybe it felt like failure. So it's very interesting.
I love it. I love hearing the curiosity because it is just, it's so aligned with creativity. And I just, as we get older, as children, we are always asking a ton of questions. And as we get older, they've done
Yes.
studies that adults on average ask 4 questions a day, which
Yeah.
sounds
So
like that's
sad.
not who you are.
No.
So,
Well, and I find it's like more, it's like, there was I was a part, or I am still part of a health community. And one of the
mhm.
things that my mentors always said to me was like, be more interested than interesting. And I used
Yeah.
to think that I wanted to be different for different sake. And I
Mm,
think that's part of where my confidence and my curiosity came through. And once I was like, no, like, I want to be more interested in people because the more I learn from somebody, the more I actually get to grow. When I talk about
yeah.
myself, maybe my ego gets a little stronger, but like, what am I doing? I'm just building this
Mm,
corner for myself, and it doesn't feel as open and welcoming. And so that has shifted, and it makes such a difference. And yeah, it's allowed me to be more confident and to say I don't need to be different for different sake. I need to be me, and if that
yeah.
looks different, it doesn't matter anymore, and I don't care. Versus I used to want to be different for different sake and still fit in.
hmm
And so yeah,
I love it.
again, I think a happy out like I think a happy, confident creative produces the best work. I've said that
Mm,
from the
hmm
minute I started working and felt like I was trapped. Like I went right because in school and studying, you're
Yeah.
not trapped. And then when I started working for somebody, I just remember being like expected to show up, like not expected to show up, but like expected to be late and or work late and expected
Yeah.
to produce. And I would just like flounder, and there wasn't that ability to figure it out in the same way or have the breath.
hmm
And I think that comes with age and just maturity too. So
Sure. But all of like so many little nuggets of information and support. And I hope listeners can tease it apart and apply it for themselves because this has been such a treat getting to chat with you.
oh,
If
thank you.
I just have one last question. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
Oh, it just feels like, I guess like the first word that comes to me is it feels like home. Like it just feels like
Mm.
love and
Mm.
and happiness and joy, and a little bit of magic probably too. But like creativity comes out, and it's that joyful presence that I get to live when I get to
Mm.
be creative.
Oh, how beautiful. I love it. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much,
Yeah.
Emily, for taking the time to chat with me. If people want to learn more about the work you have and get in touch with you, how could they go about doing that?
I love that question. So you can find me on my website. I am emilyschneider.com, but I also am super active. I love connecting and networking on LinkedIn, is where I spend a lot of time. So always connect on there. I also do a lot of sharing of tips and tricks. They're just my heart and also just like what inspires me, and what I'm reading, all those good things. So always happy to connect and grow on LinkedIn together.
Perfect. Well, I'll put links to your pages on show notes so people have easy access. And thank you again
Thank
for
you.
taking the time to chat with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much, Mari. What a great way to start the week.
Perfect. Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.